Would you like to accelerate your career and reach your full potential in just minutes a day? Welcome to the LEADx Show with New York Times best-selling author and Inc. 500 entrepreneur, Kevin Kruse.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Kruse, and welcome to the LEADx Show. Of course, the smartest way to start your day. And today's the weekly wrap-up, where we broadcast live via video on Facebook, unless we're having technical problems, that is. We take our time. I get to rant about whatever I want. And of course, we take your questions. LEADx editor Tara Millette is off today, so I'm going solo. I'm going old school. And we always start, especially when I'm solo, with whatever's on my mind. And I thought I was going to be talking about the new world order where countries, nation states, don't really matter that much anymore. I had a whole rant about that. And of course, I had another rant prepared all about artificial intelligence and those darn robots. But you know, something dropped into my email inbox that I think's super valuable. And I just wanted to share it with you before I lose track of it. I subscribe to an email newsletter from First Round Capital. Now, First Round is a venture capital firm headquartered in my home city of Philadelphia, PA, but they also have an office in San Francisco or out in Silicon Valley. And First Round Review is their online newsletter. And they just published an article called The Best Interview Questions We've Ever Published. And so for years, they've been interviewing successful entrepreneurs, usually tech entrepreneurs, and they're always asking, like, what's your favorite interview question? What's a go-to interview question? And they went through them all, and they picked what they think are the very best questions for hiring incredible performers. And they say they took these questions as a way to measure these items: grit, rigor, impact, teamwork, ownership, curiosity, and polish. Now, I'm not sure those would be the traits that I would evaluate for. I mean, they sound pretty good. I might, toss a couple of them out. Like, I'm not usually a big fan of polish. I don't think that matters that much. But I haven't thought this through. Again, I read this article myself about 10 minutes ago. And so the questions they say, I'll just read them out. This is a great time to grab your notebook and pen, by the way. So for grit, they say, tell us about a time in your career that you wanted something so badly that you were unstoppable in pursuing it. What obstacles did you overcome to get there? So I think that's a pretty good question about grit. For rigor, they ask, tell us about a time you used data to make a decision. And they say you should be really looking for the details or the complexity of how they made that decision, based on data. I'm glad I don't have to job interview these days because, man, some of these would be hard, especially on the spot. For impact, they say you could ask, tell us about a time you had a measurable impact on a job or on an organization. And they have a second question. I don't think it's as good. It says, tell us about a person or organization that you admire. Why do you think they've made an important impact? Yeah, that's too squirrely. I like the other one. For teamwork, and I am a big believer in teamwork. When working on a team, what's hardest for you? Then they have another question for teamwork. What about a time you worked on a difficult team? What was your role and experience? Do you know where the other people involved were coming from? Tell us about the situation from their perspective. And they have a third question for teamwork. What makes you happiest and most effective when working with others? And even though I'm a big believer in teamwork, man, I am such a solo driver. I am not a good team player. But anyway, for ownership, they say you might ask, tell us about a time you experienced what you perceive to be an injustice. And then it says, whatever their answer is, empathize with them about that, and then say, are you kidding? What a jerk that person was. And what they want you to look for is, does the candidate come back and say, well, it wasn't that big a deal, or, I didn't let it get to me, or whatever. Like, they brush it off. That seems like, gosh, that's complicated. For curiosity, they say you should ask, what's the last thing you really geeked out about? I like that. I used to ask people, what they read in their spare time. And what I would be looking for is like if I was hiring a user interface designer or a programmer, I wanted to know that they were reading, Wired magazine and design books and journals and things. Or I would say, have you ever gone to a conference or an event that you had to pay for out of your own pocket? And like the hardcore, and this is going back a lot of years, but like the hardcore programmers, if they were into Apple stuff, they would always find a way to get to an Apple event. Or Adobe would do their annual event and they would talk about a time where their boss gave them, a free day off, but as long as they paid for their own ticket or something to go. And so for polish, they say, see how they handle themselves when you interject or interrupt them in the conversation. And then do they send a thank you note shortly after the conversation? Oh, actually, hey, maybe I care more about polish than I realized. I am big on thank you notes. I've ranted about the power of a handwritten thank you note many times on this show, in my books, in my articles. It is a lost art. It's so rare in this world of text messages and emails that it really stands out. Now, I've hired a lot of people in my life, and I would say just in the last year and a half hiring for LEADx, I don't know, let's say I've interviewed 20, 25 people. We're still very small, but I've at least interviewed that many. I think it's probably, it's certainly less than half that send any kind of thank you at all. And most of the people who send a thank you, it's an email back. If someone doesn't send a thank you note at all, that's a knockout for me. I don't care how good their interview was, they're gone. If they send an email thank you, it's not great, but it's not a knockout. And so it's like, if I've got two candidates that are really close and one did the handwritten thank you and the other did an email, I would give the nudge, all else being equal, to the person who did the handwritten note. The best talent that I've had, they do both. I've had people who will send an email thank you within the hour of the conclusion of the interview, and then the next day or within 48 hours, the thank you note arrives. I've had people drop the thank you note off the next morning. So it's in my hands 6 hours later. So superstars really do still follow up and believe in that thank you note thing. But anyway, I don't know, I guess it's not my rant, but I just stumbled on these questions. I'm certainly going to bookmark this article in my Evernote and return to some of these questions the next time I'm looking to interview someone. And if you want to Google it, again, it's the best interview questions we've ever published from First Round Review. So that's our spontaneous interview lesson of the day. I'm going to answer some listener questions in just a minute, but we are going to start out with some fan mail. We're going to make this Fan Mail Friday. So I've got a note, an email that came in from someone we'll just call Kay. I want to thank you for what you're doing for those of us who are in the pursuit of becoming better leaders. Your books, webcasts, webinars are all exceptional and something I attribute a lot of my success to. All the best, Kay. Thank you for that, Kay. And I hope, Kay, that you and others who are getting great success from our materials, tell others about it. Please tell your friends, tell your colleagues, write leadx.org up on your whiteboard and make people ask you what that's all about. And here's our iTunes review of the week. Go-to source for all things leadershipy. How great is that? They continue with, so I got pulled into the LEADx podcast around episode 50. Since then, I've been listening on a daily basis, usually the first thing I do when I have my coffee. The first poignant question of every guest is to describe a failure and share what they learned. It's a short podcast in comparison to most, which I like since it takes about 17 to 30 minutes and always ends with a tidbit of information on how to improve 1%. Genius! Kevin does a great job making seemingly mundane business topics relevant and entertaining. Definitely worth a listen. And that's from Megahy01, Megahy01. Thanks for that review. And shoot me your shipping address so I can send you some cool LEADx swag. You had me at genius. Actually, I think you had me at leadershipy. What a great review that was. And everyone else out there, if you haven't done it yet, it's the biggest gift that you can give to me. Go to leadx.org/subscribe, and it will bounce you to the right page on iTunes. You just click that subscribe button, write a 1-sentence review, and we'll be off to the races. We got to make this LEADx family bigger. I know people like entertainment and comedians and all this stuff, but I've got such a fragile ego. We're doing awesome. And of course, I see the millions of listeners that James Altucher has, or Tim Ferriss or whatever. I'm like, what about us? Where's our millions of listeners? So you got to make my ego feel better and tell all your friends to subscribe. So let's see. Oh, I also want to make sure, tell your friends this. We are continuing to do a ton of free training over at leadx.org. We're trying to put out a brand new training every Friday. So the day this podcast airs, I believe, is October 20th. And so as an example, we're doing a twofer. We've got Jodie Foster and Michelle Joy, physicians, coincidentally, back from my hometown of Philadelphia. Shout outs to the 215s. How to Effectively Handle the Schmuck at Work. Great book. We had a great interview with them, and they're going to teach you about, handling the difficult personalities. And they've got them all. These are psychiatrists that are going to tell you how to sort of diagnose the jerks at work and what to do about them. And then yours truly at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So if you're listening in the morning, it's not too late to sign up. I'm teaching 7 things ultra-productive people do differently with Kevin Kruse. That's me. And here's why. I did a partnership with Get Abstract where we did this webinar. There were only 100 seats. And I've literally gotten emails from people like, stop being so marketing scammy and saying, that there's only 100 seats. No, we really only had 100 seats, and they went. And so I was promoting the deal, and 1 million people emailed me. All right, not 1 million, but hundreds of people emailed me saying, hey, we immediately clicked and it was already sold out. So this is like an encore presentation. This is where I talk about the number one piece of productivity advice I got from Mark Cuban. What did Africa's youngest billionaire tell me was the secret to his success? What did all these Olympic athletes tell me you have to do in order to, be a champion? So it's like, this is one of my keynote topics. This is my most popular webinar. Sign up for it. Even if you can't make it at 3, then there's going to be a replay for those people who sign up at leadx.org. So now let's keep the pace moving. Let's move to a couple of questions from our listeners. And don't forget, if you want me to answer your question, just go to leadx.org/ask Kevin. There's a little button, you click it, and you can record your question live, and it gets sent to me from anywhere in the world. So send it in. People are asking me about productivity, about leadership, entrepreneurship, speaking, writing. It's like an ask me anything you want. All right, so here's one from Caroline. I've been given this tremendous opportunity to be a managing principal at a firm in Florida. We've recently received capital funding with a stringent guideline on administering accounting systems, basically taxing our business manager with a full-time accounting job. All she has time to do now is accounting. It's killing our office productivity. It's caused a rift with our brokers. I cannot justify hiring another admin marketing person just yet, as we're trying to get in the green first. Any ideas? Caroline, thank you for the question. And sorry, I don't have many ideas other than just tough love. I mean, you're just running into productivity physics. You can't change the laws of physics. If you had someone doing a job and then all of a sudden you've dumped a bunch of more stuff on her, there's no magic answer to something's got to give. So either you convince her to, work 80 hours a week, and that's how she's going to get it all done. Or you convince the people who are waiting on her old stuff, that they don't really need it anymore or something. Or you go beg your investors for a little more money now as an investment in the firm. I mean, there's not really a lot of choices there. I think, real world, I would do what I could to engage and motivate the one team member who's like your bottleneck and say, look, anything you can do to give me a little extra hours, a little extra time, really appreciate it. I'll see what I can do in terms of, making that work for you, whether that's comp time or bonus or a raise or whatever, is within your power. I would also use it as an opportunity to say, hey, how can I help? And that's like, are there things that other people could take off her plate? But it's a good time to check in with her. Like, when's the last time you looked at her work process? Is she using tools the right way? I mean, I've seen people do things in Excel that took an hour, and then I've shown them the little A to Z sort tool, and they click it once, and that hour went away as they've now sorted A through Z or Z through A or by, column C in a second. So just make sure she's up to speed with the tools and techniques to be working at an optimal level. But it's tough. Good luck, Caroline. And I've got a question from Brian. Okay, so you got to follow along, listeners. Here's what Brian sent me. My son works at a large and successful company. Recently, he's moved to a different department because the manager there liked his work ethic. The company's growing, and the workload from several locations is now landing in his department, but his boss expects all the deadlines to be met, accuracy to be superb, and all within 40 to 45 hours per week. In other words, no overtime. Much of the change in his boss's attitude has happened in the last few weeks. He's bewildered as to why the sudden change in his approximately 58-year-old female boss. My guess, menopause. What should he do to make his environment better for himself and his coworkers? Brian. And I've edited, it was a longer email. I've edited it down a little bit. All right, listen, Brian. Here's my advice. Don't try to be a mind reader. Could his boss have a change of attitude because of menopause? Look, I'm no expert in menopause. It's sounding a little later than normal for the 58-year-old female boss, but that doesn't really matter. That's not the point. If someone's got a change of behavior at work, we can't be a mind reader. Is it a physical thing going on with them, health related or something? Maybe. Is it that they're dealing with an aging parent? Maybe. Maybe their kid got thrown out of school. Maybe their spouse left them, or they're having relationship troubles. Who knows? But that's not our job to try to guess or to be a mind reader. If I had to guess, which again, we're not supposed to, it'd be like, hey, from the outside, there's two people here, from the story you told me. What maybe changed his boss's attitude? Well, I don't know. Maybe your son. Maybe she recruited your son and he's not living up to the bargain. Maybe she thought he would work 55 hours a week without wanting more money. Maybe she thought he was going to be faster. Again, who knows? So in these situations, and like anything in leadership, this works in our personal relationships too, right? With our kids, with our spouse. We shouldn't guess. We shouldn't assume. We need to muster the professional courage to have that candid conversation. And my advice would be that your son, reaches out to his boss and says, hey, listen, things have been really busy around here, really stressful. And sometimes I'm picking up a vibe, like maybe I'm not delighting you with my performance. So I'm just want to ask, in your eyes, what could I be doing better around here? Am I living up to the expectations you had for me when you recruited me in? Help me to get better. Help me to help you. And you never know. I mean, maybe she was going to say yeah, you stink and I thought you were better. Or she's going to say, oh no, it has nothing to do with you. I think you're doing great. I'm just really stressed with all the new work that's coming in. Or, I don't like to bring my personal stuff in, but here's what's on my mind. You can only get good things by bringing the issue out. No guessing, no reworking, no back talking. Have that conversation. Good luck to your son, Brian, and thank you for sending me that email. All right, so next week, you are going to want to come back and listen to every episode of the LEADx Show. We've got a nonprofit leader, Elizabeth Lindsay, out of Washington, D.C., giving us her best leadership tips, and she actually won a pitch competition. She had to do like a 5-minute pitch and then a 1-minute pitch against all these other entrepreneurs and nonprofits, and she won first place. So she also gives us some bonus advice about if you got 1 minute to make your case, how do you do it? And then I speak to Amy Cates. She's an author, managing partner at a consulting firm, talking about how to make better and faster decisions. And she gives me an idea that I'd never heard before. It's called the golden veto. Then I talked to Dave Sanderson, and now, okay, this is a weird, this is a heavy one. If you guys remember, back on episode 100, we had Captain Sully Sullenberger, the pilot who landed that plane on the Miracle on the Hudson. Well, Dave Sanderson was a passenger on that flight. In fact, because he chose to go check on others on the plane, he was the last person, the last passenger to get off that airplane. Not the last person, that'd be Sully, but it was him and Sully. And so he tells his story, and you'll hear I'm a little off or different in that interview because, like, I've never asked somebody, what was it like when you thought you were going to die? Like, what did you think about when you thought you were going to die? Like, it's a weird thing to ask someone, but I asked him. Anyway, and then there's Andy Cunningham. Now, she is a marketing guru, and early in her career, she worked with Steve Jobs on the launch of the Apple Macintosh. Now, how cool is that? So we, of course, talk about her new marketing book, her advice about how you can position yourself, whether it's your personal brand, your business, really good advice. And then I ask her for her opinions, like, well, what do you think about Apple these days? Like, do you like their marketing campaigns or not? How do you think Tim Cook is doing? So this is, I've never spoken to anybody that worked like shoulder to shoulder with Steve Jobs like this. So it was very, I spoke to Guy Kawasaki, but that's a whole nother story. So this is really a very cool, fun week of shows. So that is it. And friends, before I sign off, don't forget, go to leadx.org/subscribe to subscribe and leave a rating. Go to leadx.org/Ask Kevin to submit your question for the show. Like us on Facebook and all the social media channels. We're at LEADx Life. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I now have like 19,000 as I've started announcing on this show. Hey, I'll respond. I'll take all except. I've got 19,000 connections on LinkedIn. I've been experimenting with short form storytelling on my LinkedIn posts. So if you'd like to follow along, having some fun on that stuff. And next week, join us on Facebook we'll be back, technology willing, with the live show. Until next time, my friends, remember, we are all leaders, whether you're at home, at work, or with your friends. So please lead with intent. Remember this question. Ask yourself every morning, how am I going to lead today?